Alright, welcome back to Mr. Rockenstein's Flip Classroom. Today we are going to be working on a lesson dealing with decimal addition. Woo, 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 decimal addition. Alright, so we've got a couple of lesson goals today. First goal, you will be able to add decimal numbers. Pretty straightforward. And number two, you will be able to explain why you must line up the decimal points when adding decimal numbers. So we're going to take care of number one first. And here are the steps for doing decimal addition. The first step, line up the decimal points. Second step, add. And third step, drop down the decimal point. Alright, so let's take a look at how. Alright, so here I've got my steps over here on the side, kind of abbreviated, and we can walk through this problem together. So my first step is to line up the decimal points. So I'm going to stack these numbers up like I was going to add them. 12.3. Get my addition symbol in there. And then the first thing I'm going to do for this second number is write in the decimal point so that both decimal points are lined up here. And I can see that on the left side of my decimal point I just have a 0. And then in the tenths place, I have a 2, and in the hundredths place, I have a 2. So, draw my line under there, and I can see now that I've got my decimal points lined up. And that means my place values are lined up. I've got the ones places lined up, and the tenths places lined up. The tens place and the hundredths place, they don't have anything with them. So what I like to do, just to help myself out, is to just add a 0 in here, just so I have something to add with. Alright, so now I'm on step 2, which is add, and I'm going to add 0 to 2, which is 2, 3 to 2, which is 5, 2 to 0, which is 2, and 1 to 0, which is 1. Then I'm on my last step, which is drop the decimal point down, just keeping it right in line. And my answer is 12.52. I look back at my problem. 12, if I estimate about 12 plus a 0.22, that makes sense that I'm still at 12 and I'm just a little bit higher. So 12.22, or excuse me, 12.52. All right. So now you try it on this problem, 8.6 plus 2.15. Remember, those three steps are to line up the decimal point, add, and then drop the decimal point down. So pause the video right now and give it a try. Alright, so here I'm going to walk through the problem and you compare it to what you have and see if you have the same thing or something similar. I'm going to start by stacking these up, lining up those decimal points, 8.6, add the plus sign. And then I'm going to put in my decimal point, and I'll start with what's on the left, which is a 2, and then 1, 5. Got my decimal points lined up, so I can finish it off with a line here. I'm going to add that 0 to help myself out. 0 plus 5 is 5, 6 plus 1, 7, 8 plus 2 is 10. Then last step, drop down that decimal point. It goes right there, and I get 10.75. I'm going to look back at my original problem here, and I'm going to think to myself, does it make sense that something that's about 9, if I add that to something that's about 2, I'll get something that's about 11? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Alright, so why don't you take a crack at this one, and then we'll start talking about the second goal. So pause the video right now, and you take a crack at this addition problem. Alright, so it should look something like this. Oop, not the laser pointer. 7.1 plus, put in my decimal point, what's to the left, a 4, to the right, a 3. Got my decimal points lined up. So now I can add. 1 plus 3 is 4. 7 plus 4 is 11. drop down my decimal point, I get 11.4. Does it make sense that something that's about 7 added to something that's about 4 equals about 11? Yeah, it does. All right. So let's think about this question. Why do you have to line up the decimals? That's our second goal. Why do you have to line them up? Well, to answer that question, let's go back to our original problem where we had 12.3 plus 0.22 equals n. If I had lined this up the way you learn to line up addition problems with whole numbers, it would look like this. 12.3. I would just line this up like this. 0, 2, 2. And this is where my decimal point would be. And if we did this problem like this, we'd be adding the ones place right here, or excuse me, the tens place, that's right here, we'd be adding that to the ones place. This 0 is in the ones place. This 1 is in the tens place. That wouldn't make sense. Also, this right here is the ones place, and this 2 right here is in the tenths place. And we can't add those to each other. And then finally, we've got this 3, which is in the tenths place, and this 2, which is in the hundredths place. I can't just add those together, because if I add a 3 tenths to 2 hundredths, just adding, that should be 5. But this is 0.3, and this is 0.02. So if I were to add these, what I really should get is 0.32. So that is not equal to 5. So I can't line the problem up the way you used to line up whole number problems. I've got to make sure that my decimal points are lined up. All right, so let's try one more problem. So you do this problem, pause the video right now, do it, and then we'll take a look at it together. Remember, you got to line up those decimal points, and the reason you do that is so that all your place values line up. Ones place with ones place, tens place with tens place, and so on. All right, so paused, and coming back, we'll check what you did here. See how yours is the same or different as what I do. Now, I've got 67.9 and 122. In 122, there's not a decimal point showing, but I know where it would be. So I'm going to line one up here, and in 122, the decimal point would be right here because this is the ones place, so it would be right to the right of that. So I've got a 0 right here, 2 in the ones place, 2 in the tens place, and a 1 in the hundreds place. So when I add this up, I get 9 plus 0 is 9, 7 plus 2 is 9, 6 plus 2 is 8, 1 plus nothing, and then I drop that decimal point down. So I got 189.9. All right, that's the end. Remember, you can always go back, rewind, and watch any parts that you didn't understand over again, and make sure that you write down some questions so that you're ready to talk tomorrow in class. See ya.